In the mid-21st century, a ship carrying settlers from Earth approaches the planet Carpathia. On this day, Mitchell Hoban, a scout and explorer from Fort Haven, returns from another expedition and meets with President Tate and the head of security, Stella, who ask him to hand over his weapon, as carrying it openly is against the colony's rules. However, Tate gets distracted by another message from the ship and leaves, failing to notice that the scout ignored his request. Tate contacts the ship's captain, who reports that their hull is damaged and that the ship may experience severe overheating upon entering the atmosphere. The captain mentions how hard life on Earth has become, and Tate shares his concern about the incoming storms, known as the whiteout, before the communication ends. Meanwhile, Mitchell returns home, where he is greeted by his son and his wife, Karina. He tells her that everything is ready. Karina understands what he means, but worries about their son. At the same time, Stella briefs her agent, Cass, about the incoming ship. However, she doesn't know whether her own family is on board. Meanwhile, Karina expresses her fears to her husband, admitting she has never known a life beyond their town. Mitchell assures her that she'll love it outside even more. Suddenly, he asks her to confirm that she won't betray him. After Karina leaves, Mitchell finds his dossier hidden among her things. Meanwhile, Karina and her colleague, Flur Morgan, notice local DJ Tipper receiving a delivery of a banned substance and attempt to apprehend him. But suddenly, the whiteout strikes the town. Flur manages to flee, while Karina doesn't make it to shelter but remains unharmed. However, once the storm ends, someone strikes her on the head. She is taken to the medical bay, and an announcement is made to search for her husband. Tate is tormented by guilt, knowing it was he who had asked Karina to spy on Mitchell, but Stella reminds him that Mitchell intended to destroy everything they had built. Later, Tate addresses the passengers of the incoming ship, telling them that the pioneers named the planet after the ship that first came to the Titanic's rescue. The settlers didn't know if they would survive, but 10 years later, scientists have provided electricity and food, and scouts are exploring their new home. Now, Carpathia awaits them. Meanwhile, Stella argues with Cass, who can't believe Mitchell would treat his wife that way, especially after being the first to find water, medicinal herbs, and doing so much for the colony. Nevertheless, Flur and Cass approach Jack, the commander of the scouts, but he refuses to betray his friend. He even speaks contemptuously of Karina for spying on her husband. After the police leave, Mitchell asks Jack for supplies and instructs him to move the group toward the lake, where he will meet them. Meanwhile, Flur tells Cass about Karina's betrayal and decides to double her security. At the same time, the ship's captain informs Tate about the people on board. The name Julius Berger raises Tate's concern, as this man led the evacuation program on Earth and has considerable influence over the people. Tate returns to his quarters and finds Mitchell waiting for him. Mitchell accuses the president of forcing his wife to spy on him. Tate reminds him that Mitchell was plotting a coup. Mitchell lashes out, yelling that those outside the fence will never forget what Tate ordered to be done to them. He says that Tate showed them mercy, and now Mitchell will leave to join them. At that moment, security agents enter the office. Mitchell wounds 2 of them and escapes. Tate orders Cass to find him, and Cass learns that Mitchell has taken his son and fled. Jack catches up with his friend and warns him about the pursuit. He reminds Mitchell that his people aren't ready yet, but Mitchell refuses to listen and orders the group to move toward the lake. Jack then goes to security headquarters, while Flur and Cass track Mitchell. Mitchell, meanwhile, sets up a tent by the lake with his son. Tate informs Stella about Mitchell's mention of the people beyond the fence, but she refuses to believe it's possible. That night, Tate confides in the captain that when the first settlers arrived on Carpathia, they contracted a virus. Many died, including his own children. The worst part was that the infection could be seen. A halo would appear around the heads of the infected. His wife couldn't bear the loss. Tate himself made the hard decision to enforce a quarantine. He hopes the new arrivals will be safe. Meanwhile, Flur and Cass are attacked. They manage to wake up and return fire, though they don't know who their attackers are. Mitchell spends a long time watching his sleeping son, then breaks down in tears and rehearses how he might break the boy's neck. In the morning, Tate tells Stella that her daughter, Lily, is on board the ship, but her father is not with her. At the same time, the captain reports that the ship will land on Carpathia within an hour. However, the vessel catches fire and communication is lost. Meanwhile, Flur and Cass find Mitchell by a stream. He draws a gun and tells them that he and Karina had planned to leave the town. Flur accuses him of murdering his wife, and when Mitchell raises his weapon, she shoots and kills him. She finds the boy sleeping in the tent just as the captain announces an evacuation. The connection with the ship is permanently lost, and the people see the burning trails of shuttles falling from the sky. Flur wakes the boy and takes him back to the town. Tate informs Stella that Julius Berger was on the ship, and she is horrified, unable to imagine what will happen if he survived. Later, Flur reports the attack to Tate. She is certain that the attackers were bipeds. However, Tate is more concerned with finding surviving passengers. At that very moment, one of the girls crawls out of a burning shuttle where everyone else perished, only to fall into the hands of unknown men. Other passengers are found by scouts and are led toward the town. The unknown men bring the captured girl to a cave and hand her a newborn baby, telling her that if she cannot heal the child, she will die herself. Meanwhile, in the town, Julius meets with Tate and asks for permission to organize a prayer of gratitude. The president agrees but refuses to participate. He restrains Stella, who is desperate to go search for her daughter, and reminds her about the people outside the walls. They will surely seek revenge. Stella then asks Flur and Cass to search for Lily. One of the surviving shuttle girls, Aisling, approaches Stella and accuses Julius of having taken her mother's boarding pass, which led to her death. Meanwhile, the scouts find the shuttle where Lily was supposed to be, but she is missing. Just then, the leader of the Wild Ones, Rudy, approaches them. He informs them that the surviving girl is with his people and leads them away. Meanwhile, Stella confronts Julius, who claims that the woman allegedly gave him the boarding pass willingly. After Stella leaves, Julius instructs his accomplice to find Aisling. Aisling, meanwhile, meets Tipper, who invites her to his station and shares that he is a prodigy, which is why he was brought to Carpathia. His family remained on Earth, and he misses his 4 sisters. On the way to the caves, Jack explains that the Wild Ones are the result of failed human cloning experiments. They were meant to settle alien planets first. When the epidemic began, Tate ordered their execution, but Mitchell saved them. Flur struggles to believe it. They finally reach the site and recognize Lily among the captives. Rudy declares that they will exchange her for the healed baby, and that he also demands Tate. Meanwhile, Stella asks Julius to undergo a brain scan to uncover the truth, but he refuses. At the same time, Aisling notices a knife on Tipper's table. She discreetly grabs it and leaves. Julius is just beginning his sermon when Aisling, armed with the knife, approaches him. But Tipper intervenes and leads Aisling away before she can commit the crime. Meanwhile, Rudy brings Fleur and the child to the fort, stating that the hostages will be returned in exchange for the healthy baby. Near the caves, one of the Wild Ones notices a ring on Jack's hand and demands it. Jack fights back. Amidst the chaos, Lily attempts to escape but is quickly recaptured. Back at the fort, Tate confirms that he gave the order to eliminate the advanced cultivars, shocking Fleur. Meanwhile, Cass tries to appease the guard and convince Jack to give up the ring. However, Jack still beats the scout severely. Tate explains to Fleur that the advanced cultivars, ACs, were created to test human survivability on a new planet. When the virus outbreak occurred, people blamed the ACs for it. Together, they go to speak with Rudy, who insists that the ACs were not responsible for the deaths of the children. He also claims that humans know very little about this planet. Tate returns to his office and suddenly sees a drawing made by his son moving by itself across the table. Meanwhile, Stella offers Aisling the chance to undergo testing to expose the truth about Julius. Later, Stella confesses that she knows about Julius's fondness for young girls and threatens to reveal his secrets. Afterward, she visits the baby, and Tate shares his doubts with her. The ACs were not supposed to be able to have children. In the morning, tissue samples are taken from the baby, and Fleur brings her to Rudy. The hostages are led to the fort gates, but Jack notices Rudy's signal and realizes that they are about to be executed. He starts a fight. Lily runs toward Fleur, and Cass rushes to help his friend. Together, they kill 2 ACs while the third escapes. Rudy leaves silently. The people return to town with the baby. Stella comes to meet them, but Lily unexpectedly refuses to acknowledge her, believing that her mother abandoned her. Tate decides that the next day they will return the baby to Rudy and admits that he took tissue samples because the women in the town have stopped conceiving, unlike the ACs. Early in the morning, Fleur leaves for Rudy, hiding the baby in a bag. Meanwhile, Julius hands Stella documents belonging to a scientist who was en route to Carpathia. During the entire journey, the scientist studied data about the whiteout and discovered something deeply troubling. At the same time, Rudy witnesses the beginning of a storm but shows no fear. Back at the fort, Stella struggles to understand the professor's formulas and remembers the mathematical genius of Tipper. Meanwhile, Fleur and Rudy meet, and he admits that he had planned to kill the hostages, though not Fleur. He warns her that today's storm will be exceptionally strong. At the fort, Lily unexpectedly offers to improve her relationship with Stella, saying that Julius asked her to do so. Tipper, meanwhile, annoys Cass with his silly jokes, pushing the agent to attack him. Cass manages to regain control of himself, but Tipper runs off, abandoning his work on the formulas. At the same time, Tate steps outside the gates and suddenly sees one of his son's mugs lying on the ground. However, Jack cannot see the object. Meanwhile, 2 repairmen, Leon and Grant, head out to inspect the radio tower. Jack warns Tate and Stella about changes in nature. He is convinced that a massive storm is approaching, and the president orders the highest state of alert. Rudy escorts Flur back to the fort and reminds her that she can summon him by firing a flare. Meanwhile, Cass convinces Tipper to return to work. Tipper agrees, but only if he is allowed to see his sisters. Upon receiving assurance, Tipper deciphers the equations, revealing that this storm will be incredibly powerful. Tate orders children and the elderly to be taken to safety, while Julius asks for permission to address the people. However, the president speaks first, ordering everyone to take the most decisive precautions. After meeting with Fleur, he promises to inform the people about the ACs. Meanwhile, at the radio tower, the repairmen finish their work, but a gust of wind tears off a piece of equipment, pinning Grant down. Leon tries to free him, but fails. Learning that the repairmen haven't returned, Cass rushes to help. Even together, Cass and Leon are unable to free Grant. Grant urges them to leave, saying there's a construction bunker nearby where they can shelter. The two men leave, but just before reaching the bunker, they are caught by the full force of the storm. The whiteout hits the town, tearing off roofs and flattening houses. Near the bunker, Rudy appears and drags both men inside. He recognizes Cass as the killer of his people, but when Cass whispers Fleur's name, Rudy backs off. Morning comes. In the town, the damages are assessed. Serious, but not catastrophic, though there are a few casualties. Suddenly, the people see Cass carrying Leon on his back. Stella tells Tate that the people enjoy Julius's sermons and want him included in the fort's general council. She then invites her daughter to live in her home, and Lily agrees. That evening, Leon's wedding takes place. Stella arranges a brain scan for Tipper, and during the procedure, he sees visions of his sisters. Meanwhile, Tate agrees to admit Julius into the fort's council. That night, the scouts find a male AC outside the gates. In the morning, Tate wakes up to the voices of his children. A child's handprint is visible on the window, but the room is empty. The captured AC is locked in a cell. A little later, Cass brings him food, and the man hungrily devours it. Meanwhile, Stella complains to Tate about the loss of Earth's plant seeds. Tate compares it to what's happening with people. Their birth rate is also falling, but the ACs have found a way to reproduce, and he plans to take DNA samples from the captured man. At that moment, the AC is sketching the memorial to the first shuttle, visible from the cell window. Suddenly, he sees the lantern light turn from green to red, loses control, breaks down the door, and escapes. The agents chase after him. Downstairs, he encounters a cleaning woman who, seeing the blood on his face, tries to help. He says his name, Elijah, but when she reaches out her hand, he snaps. When he regains control, the woman lies before him, covered in blood. Horrified, he runs away. Fleur finds the woman and calls for a medic. While the injured woman insists that the AC wasn't to blame, he was simply terrified. Security forces begin a citywide search, while Fleur and Cass find his drawing and head to the memorial. Meanwhile, Julius tries to convince the injured woman to portray Elijah as an uncontrollable beast, but she insists he behaved more like a frightened child. Later, Lily visits Tipper and brings him information about Elijah's incident and escape. Tipper immediately broadcasts the news to his listeners. Fleur spots the AC near the memorial and gives chase. At one point, she has to leap across the street, slips, and hangs from a rooftop, but Elijah returns and saves her. He then pleads with her not to lock him up again because it makes him feel unbearable. Cass realizes Elijah is not a killer. He came back to help Fleur. They hide him in an abandoned building. Elijah explains that when he does bad things, his mind goes away, and it's Tate's fault for the experiments he conducted on him. Whenever the light turned red, it caused him terrible pain. Cass decides to find Elijah's dossier among Tate's papers. He leaves Fleur with the AC and heads to the president's office. But upon leaving, he runs into Tate, who admits that he doesn't want to let the AC go. The safety of the people is his top priority. Meanwhile, Tipper confesses to Stella that it was Lily who gave him the information about Elijah. At the same time, workers laying pipes discover a strange stone embedded in the ground. Meanwhile, Fleur reads the files Cass obtained and realizes that experiments were conducted on Elijah's brain, causing his loss of control. She remembers the way to contact Rudy and leaves. Meanwhile, Stella confronts her daughter, who refuses to explain her motives. Stella asks Lily to leave her home for a while. That night, Cass questions Elijah about what it's like to be an AC. Elijah assures him that they are no different from humans. But then lightning flashes. Elijah loses control and knocks Cass unconscious. Tate again hears the voices of his children, but this time he asks them not to leave. In the morning, Cass regains consciousness. Elijah doesn't remember what happened, but fears he might be dangerous. Just then, Fleur and Rudy arrive, but they don't know how to get Elijah out of the fort safely. Cass asks them to wait and goes to Tate, claiming he has captured the AC. Tate promises that Elijah will not be killed, only put to sleep. Scouts and security agents surround the building where Elijah and Fleur are hiding. Cass gets Fleur out just as a smoke grenade is thrown inside. Elijah charges toward the exit, tranquilizer darts hitting him, but he loses control, starts destroying everything around him, and is ultimately shot dead. Rudy is released, and Flur accuses Tate of betrayal. Lily moves in with Tipper at his studio. Julius manages to win Jack over to his side. Meanwhile, Stella shows Tate the strange stone they found. It contains a human jawbone. This proves that Earthlings were not the first on Carpathia. Cass apologizes to Flur, and Tate steps outside the gates, where two boys are waiting for him. Even though he knows they aren't really his sons, he still pleads with them not to leave. Later, Stella confirms that the jawbone they found belongs to a hominid. Tate admits that his children are here with him. That evening, Lily starts working at the bar. Unexpectedly, a strange man arrives, calling himself Pat. He orders a drink, something not in high demand on Carpathia, and pays for it with a handful of diamonds. Later, Flur and Cass respond to a call about a fight between Pat and one of the scouts. But when they try to arrest the man, he gathers his stones and flees, advising them to go see the planet they haven't truly seen, having been cooped up in their fort. Jack brings a recovered stone to Julius, while the agents pursue the old man into the mountains and then disappear. Stella learns that Pat spoke about the ocean. She recalls the first man on Carpathia who was reported dead after his ship exploded. But what if that wasn't true? The head of security decides to journey to the ocean, even though it's considered dangerous. Meanwhile, Flur and Cass regain consciousness. Pat invites them to follow him and see the bodies. At the same time, Stella invites Jack to accompany her on her expedition. Cass and Flur argue about venturing into the Forbidden Zone, but Pat assures them there's no radiation near the ocean. That's just a lie spread by the scouts. Suddenly, they are surrounded by ACs. Meanwhile, a diamond rush begins in the town. People use the gems to buy forbidden goods. Julius quickly preaches about the dangers of materialism, while again demanding a seat on the council's leadership. The ACs allow 3 of them to pass under the condition that Pat carries the weapons. The agents reluctantly hand over their guns, but once past them, Pat tosses the weapons away. The scouts following their trail realize that the agents are heading toward the coast. Pat suddenly declares that he's leading the pair to paradise, where they can become Adam and Eve. He explains he was part of the original pioneers, but the very first to step onto Carpathia was a AC named Trigger 99, created specifically for that purpose, a being without fear, regret, or doubt. However, it turned out that ACs were vulnerable to disease. Trigger 99 got sick and died. Pat was left alone on the planet. Flur and Cass recall rumors that Pat had killed his commander, but the old man refuses to explain. That night, Flur suggests leaving. She doesn't trust Pat, but Cass persuades her to see it through to the end. In the morning, Pat leads them to the crash site of the first shuttle and reminisces about his landing. He admits he is ready to die, but will show them the way back first. Meanwhile, Lily is attacked at the bar and the diamonds are stolen. Tipper believes Julius is fueling the diamond fever, keeping people obsessed with it. He sees Julius as a two-faced and dangerous man, hungry for power. At the same time, Pat recounts how, after the crash, he was found by his dog, the same one that had stayed behind on Earth. Cass doesn't believe him, but Pat insists she only died a few years ago. He adds that they could have seen her too, if they thought differently, but humans will never truly understand this place. They finally reach the ocean. The agents run joyfully toward the water, while Pat laughs at their wonder. It turns out that diamonds lie scattered along the beach like ordinary pebbles, and people treat them as such. Meanwhile, Stella and Jack make their way through thick vegetation and suffer insect bites. Jack goes into shock, and Stella barely manages to save him. Pat urges the young agents to stay at the coast. He claims the planet itself tells him where it's safe and where it's dangerous. Then he walks along the beach, playing with his invisible dog. Finally, he collapses into the water. The agents pull him out, but the old man is already dead. Cass proposes they let the ocean take his body and head home. They leave, and later Stella and Jack arrive at the beach. Stella finds a stone with letters carved into it. Meanwhile, Cass and Flur argue about which direction to go, but then spot a rocket taking off nearby. They rush toward it and reunite with Stella and Jack. The head of security examines the coastline and finds human skeletons. The water begins to rise and they all retreat. Back in the town, Stella reports her findings. Meanwhile, Julius contacts a ship heading for Carpathia and promises to eliminate Tate. The next day, 3 scouts unexpectedly go missing, and no one knows why they left the town. Scouts search the surrounding areas while Stella comforts the pregnant wife of one of the missing men. Later, she speaks with the children of the group's commander, Josie Hunter, who are very worried about their mother. Tate tries to find out where and why they went, but Jake remains evasive. Just then, a report comes in. Josie's rocket has been spotted. Security agents and scouts search the perimeter until a wounded and exhausted Josie emerges from the wilderness. She recounts that her group was attacked by ACs and explains how she survived. The town welcomes her as a hero. However, back at home, Josie begins behaving strangely. Stella explains that she is simply exhausted and needs time to recover. Tate orders Jack not to take action against the ACs until all the facts are clear. The scouts continue searching for the other missing team members. Meanwhile, Josie sits down at the table, but strangely forgets to say the traditional prayer of thanks, surprising her children. At the same time, the scouts find another survivor. However, he claims it was Josie herself who attacked them and that no ACs were present. Later, security agents arrive at Josie's home and arrest her. The rescued scout refuses to tell Julius the mission's true objective, repeating only that Josie killed the third scout and mutilated him. Meanwhile, Rudy calls for 2 volunteers to kill Jack. Tate accuses Josie of attacking her comrades. The woman demands only one thing: to see her children. Meanwhile, the ACs find the body of the fallen scout and look at a photo of his pregnant wife. Suddenly, Stella receives a call from Josie's radio, claiming she is injured and lying in the desert, pleading for help. Stella reports this to Tate, but he speaks about his strange visions and admits he no longer knows whom or what to believe. Meanwhile, ACs infiltrate the town. Flur and Cass set out to investigate the second Josie signal, while the first Josie, still in custody, behaves increasingly strangely. Tate questions Josie's children, and the younger son suddenly says that the woman wasn't their mother, even though she looked exactly like her. Meanwhile, the ACs sabotage the town's electrical systems. Security agents watch the town lights go out and unknowingly pass just a few steps away from the real Josie lying in the desert. The electric lock on the false Josie's cell deactivates, allowing her to escape. Tate declares a state of emergency, unaware that the AC has already found Josie's children. Meanwhile, the real Josie realizes she can only rely on herself. Meanwhile, the electricity failure causes severe complications during childbirth. Doctors are forced to make the agonizing choice of whom to save first, the mother or the baby. Agents go to Jack to help patrol the town. Cass spots ACs and discreetly signals Jack where the enemies are hiding. At the right moment, all 3 open fire. One AC is killed, the second is captured. Tate orders them to find Josie, and Cass discovers that her children are missing too. By morning, the body of the fallen scout is brought back to the fort, while his wife is still fighting for her life. Meanwhile, Josie finally reaches the fort, but armed guards treat her as a threat. Julius reports to Tate that Josie has been caught and tries to pressure him into ordering the extermination of all ACs, but Tate refuses. The real Josie explains that she didn't see her attackers and was lying injured in a pit. Jack doesn't believe her. However, when Flur and Cass hear her mention overhearing 2 agents passing nearby, they realize she's telling the truth. Josie then accuses Jack of sending them on a mission to kill Rudy. Tate orders her detained and demands the children be found. Cass forces Josie's release at gunpoint, and together they set off outside the town to search for the children. Meanwhile, the first child conceived and carried to term on Carpathia in many years is born. In the desert, Josie calls out to her children. Cass admits that there was another Josie. Just then, the children emerge from behind the rocks, having run away in terror from the false Josie. They hesitate, unsure whether to trust the woman before them. But after she asks them a few personal questions, they rush into her arms. Suddenly, Jack's squad appears, intending to kill Josie. Cass moves to protect her, when from behind a rock steps the second Josie. Seeing the armed people, the false Josie turns and walks away. Tate asks Cass to keep the incident secret. Julius tries again to persuade the president to move against the ACs, but Tate refuses. So Julius secretly contacts the spaceship CT-10. Meanwhile, Tate confesses to Stella that he believes humanity is not alone on Carpathia. The next day, when Tate enters his office, he sees himself. Tate too tells him that they know everything about humans. Humans came to Carpathia because their planet had died, but this planet is already inhabited. Beings similar to humans once lived here, and they went extinct. The same fate awaits humanity. Meanwhile, Cass receives a note from an unknown sender, threatening that they know everything about him. The message deeply unsettles him. Tate tells Stella about his conversation with the local force, and she suggests beginning a study of the phenomenon, but it will take time. Cass runs home and checks the closet where he keeps his legal Cass file. At the same time, Stella orders all communications from the day of the Josie incident to be reviewed. Tate asks Jack to stay silent about what he saw. That evening, a distressed Cass goes to the bar, drinks heavily, and meets a woman named Carla, who offers to go home with him. Meanwhile, after listening to the conversation recording with Josie, Stella notices strange pauses, as if an ultrasonic signal was interfering. She is convinced it's the work of the local forces. The next morning, Cass wakes up and finds his guest rummaging through his closet. He grabs the girl, but she denies sending the threatening note. She grabs a pair of scissors to defend herself, but ends up injuring herself and fleeing. Cass chases after her, drawing attention from some boys in the yard before returning to his house. Later, Flur notices his odd behavior and becomes upset, refusing to speak to her partner, especially after a missing persons report is filed. Carla's husband, Shapiro, reports that she's been missing for 2 days and provides a photo. Flur promises to find her. Meanwhile, Julius demands that Tate reveal the truth about the doppelgangers to the public, but Tate advises him to stay out of his affairs. The partners head out to search for Carla, whose husband works in the greenhouse. They begin by searching her apartment. Flur finds a torn note, and Cass secretly compares it with his own threatening letter, confirming they were written in the same handwriting. Flur learns that Carla was last seen at the bar with a man. Cass suggests they split up and rushes home to destroy any evidence of her visit. He throws away the scissors, but fails to notice a drop of blood left on the carpet. Meanwhile, Tate leaves to meet Rudy. Julius interprets Tate's absence as an escape from his problems and tries to persuade Stella to support him. She refuses. Flur intensifies the investigation and determines the direction Carla and the unknown man took. Meanwhile, at Stella's request, Tipper installs several receivers throughout the town to detect a specific frequency. Later, one of the agents reports that Carla tried to buy a gun. Flur theorizes that she intended to kill either her husband or her lover. Cass realizes Shapiro might be in danger and heads to him. At the same time, a couple of boys tell Flur they saw a man chasing Carla and lead her to Cass's house. Meanwhile, Cass finds Shapiro in the greenhouse, confirms he's safe, and sets up a watch outside the house. Flur searches Cass's house and notices the drop of blood on the floor. At the same time, Cass spots Carla and intercepts her. He accuses her of stealing the pistol, implying she deliberately came to his house for it, but she insists she won't let anyone stop her from punishing her husband. She demands to know why there's a different name in Cass's paperwork. Just then, they hear Flur and other agents approaching. Carla flees. Cass chases her, but is forced to stop when Flur points her gun at him, ordering him to drop his weapon. She accuses him of murdering Carla, since she didn't see the woman and doesn't believe her partner. Meanwhile, Tipper shows Stella that the ultrasound recording she captured spells out 4 letters. Cass tries to convince Flur that Carla was planning to kill her husband, but Flur refuses to believe him. At the same time, Shapiro returns home and finds Carla waiting with a gun. She begs him to let her go, but he reminds her of who she once was on Earth. With sheer mental force, he compels her to raise the gun to her own head. When he learns she was with another man, he strikes her violently. Later, Flur interrogates Cass again, but still refuses to believe him. Meanwhile, Tate summons Rudy, but ends up chasing after visions of his sons. Julius once again tries to influence Jack, and Jack confesses to him about Josie. Meanwhile, Flur finds Cass's old legal Cass file in his home and demands an explanation. Cass refuses to reveal his true past. Later, Stella brings Shapiro's diary to Cass and urges him to tell the truth, but Cass insists he has only ever told the truth. Flur is informed that Carla's note has been found. Meanwhile, Cass reads the diary and suddenly realizes that all the notes were written not by Carla, but by her husband. He fakes a seizure and escapes custody. At the same time, Shapiro tells Flur that his wife loved to go to the lake, and the security agents head there. Meanwhile, Julius goads Jack into killing the captured AC, promising the support of powerful friends from the sky. At the same time, Tate pleads with the ACs to unite with the humans for the sake of mutual survival. He explains that he ordered the prisoner released, but the man never returned, causing Rudy to distrust the president. Rudy refuses to help humanity, convinced they are doomed, unlike the ACs. Meanwhile, Cass leaves a message for Flur, revealing that Shapiro wrote the farewell letter himself, and that's why he fled. Cass then rushes to the greenhouse. The doors are locked, but Cass hears cries for help. He breaks in and finds Carla tied up in the basement. Suddenly, Shapiro appears, ready to kill them both. Cass lunges at him. The gun fires several times, piercing the flimsy ceiling, and debris rains down on them. Carla manages to free her hands, and together they crawl out from under the rubble just as agents arrive. Shapiro is arrested. Later, Cass confesses to Flur that Tate gave him a new life while under witness protection, but refuses to reveal what crime he committed. That night, Julius announces that the AC responsible for attacking the town has been hanged. Since the president did not guarantee the prisoner's safety, the people had to punish the criminal themselves. Tate returns to town and urges Cass to tell Flur the truth, assuring him that she will understand. Cass shows her the note, realizing that someone else knows about him. That someone turns out to be Julius, who obtained information from the incoming spaceship. That same night, Julius receives a dossier about a certain woman. Meanwhile, Stella reports that she has deciphered the 4 letters from the signal. The next day, Tipper falls ill with a disease resembling the virus that wiped out many settlers during Carpathia's early years. Once again, Julius insists on the extermination of the ACs, but Tate categorically refuses. However, the scout interrogating the captured AC also falls ill. Doctors name the virus C-24, and it develops at an alarming rate. Julius contacts the spaceship and informs them of his plan to use the disease against Tate before going to meet with Jack. Later, the scouts arrest Flur. She demands an explanation, but Jack remains silent. Meanwhile, Julius demands that Tate hand over classified information regarding Project Omega. Stella is concerned about Flur's arrest, but Julius claims he has every reason to seek the truth. Tate agrees to hand over the dossier in exchange for Flur's release. Upon receiving the documents, Julius discovers that Flur is a AC. He accuses Tate of weakness and incompetence, warning that the human colony is at risk of extinction and that humanity's last hope may be lost. Later, Julius informs Flur that she is a AC. She refuses to believe him, but Stella retrieves her. Flur is devastated, insisting she remembers her parents and has plenty of photographs, but Stella confirms that Flur is a product of Project Omega. Meanwhile, the number of deaths among the infected begins to rise. Julius plans to bring a motion before the council to launch a punitive expedition against the ACs. But first, he wants Flur stripped of her citizenship. However, Jack speaks out against this move. At the same time, Cass tries to comfort Flur, unable to understand why she is so devastated. Stella checks on Tipper, who hints that the 4 letters spell out genome. Later, Lily expresses her wish to return to her mother, but Stella inadvertently reveals that the room is currently occupied. Julius overhears this and realizes where Flur is being kept. He shares this information with Jack and promises that the council will authorize the destruction of all ACs. Meanwhile, Tate visits Flur and explains that Project Omega was designed to enhance intelligence and cognitive ability. The president also accidentally reveals that part of his own genetic material is in her. Flur runs out into the street and Cass chases after her. They narrowly avoid detection by scouts. Cass hides Flur in the radio room and rushes back to Tate. Later, the colony's leadership council convenes. As Julius prepares to present a vote of no confidence against the president, Tate unexpectedly steps down voluntarily, passing authority to Jack. Tate advises him not to fight the ACs, but instead to find a way to defeat the virus. Julius, caught off guard, temporarily loses his advantage. After the meeting, Stella tells Tate that the letters in the message spell DNA. This means the local force may not only copy humans, but infect them as well. She proposes locking down the city. Meanwhile, Flur notices the first signs of illness in Lily. Stella tells Jack that there is a local force on Carpathia that listens to humans. They plan to check what matches the DNA sequence from the message. Meanwhile, Tate asks Cass to smuggle Flur out of the city and place her under Rudy's protection. At the same time, Stella weeps over her sick daughter. Later, she reminds Tate that bats are stronger than moths because they use echolocation. Thus, she proposes creating a sound dome around the city, emitting disruptive signals to block the influence of the local force. That night, Jack refuses to occupy the president's office, determined to act instead. But that's exactly what Julius needs to make contact with the spaceship. He proposes eliminating Jack, but sparing Stella. He is informed that the ship is ready for landing. Meanwhile, Cass escorts Flur outside the city. While they wait for Rudy, Cass confesses that he used to work for drug cartels and once killed a child. The incident affected him so deeply that he turned in all his associates to the authorities. For that, he was granted witness protection, and Tate brought him to Carpathia. In the morning, Rudy arrives for Flur, and she says goodbye to Cass. Meanwhile, the dome is ready and awaiting activation. However, Julius orders its launch to be delayed, fearing it might disrupt incoming signals. Stella is confused. In her view, the people's safety should come first. She reports the situation to Tate. At the same time, Rudy informs Flur that they must leave as soldiers are approaching and many children are with them. Unexpectedly, Jack and his men refuse to evacuate the city until the shield is activated, to Julius's dismay. Forced into a corner, Julius admits that another spaceship is about to land on Carpathia. Later, a group of scouts storms the radio room. Julius orders them to stop the operation despite Stella's protests. Unexpectedly, Jack reminds everyone that he is currently the acting president. The scout orders the dome to be activated and Julius to be arrested, then returns authority back to Tate. The ship loses contact with Carpathia. Once again, Tate is visited by the entity in his own image, threatening him. But Tate counters that humans have preserved love and hope, and that makes them stronger. The dome begins to function, and people start to recover from the illness. The ACs leave just as the spaceship descends toward the planet. The series is science fiction, however, it features little in the way of CGI, flashy special effects, or anything that overshadows the heart of the story. Instead, it vividly demonstrates that human nature cannot be changed, and there will always be someone who believes they know best how to shape society.